This is a fictional, original story created for entertainment and educational reflection. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. In this story, I'm sharing a personal journey about boundaries, family, and consequences. I didn't realize how dangerous silence could be until the night my phone rang at 11:55 p.m. My name is Piper. I was 32, sitting alone in my Milwaukee apartment after my mother told me not to come home for Christmas, not because of distance, not because of work, but because my sister would lose her mind if she saw me. Outside, the wind scraped the windows. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than ever. Then my phone vibrated. I didn't hear a hello. I heard screaming, sirens, panic. My sister's voice broke through the noise. "What did you do?" "Why are there police cars here?" In that moment, I understood something I'd avoided for years. This wasn't about a holiday. It was about a family that had learned to survive on silence and the cost of finally breaking it. If family silence has ever cost you something, you'll understand what came next. The real damage didn't start on Christmas. It started quietly, right after my father's funeral. For 2 years, my life revolved around hospital rooms and medication schedules. I paused my career. I drained my savings. I did it because he was my dad. When he passed, I expected grief to be shared. Instead, it was collected. My sister Cynthia showed up at the memorial dressed for attention. Perfect hair, designer clothes. She took photos. She smiled when people looked. When the service ended, she didn't hug me. She asked about life insurance. That was the first moment I felt something shift. Later that day, back at the family house, my mother called me into the kitchen. She closed the door behind us and slid a stack of papers across the counter. She said Cynthia was struggling financially. She said I had a stable job and didn't really need my share. She said family meant sacrifice. What she didn't say was thank you. What she didn't acknowledge was the money I had already spent keeping my father alive. When I refused to sign, the room went cold. No yelling, no discussion, just silence. A few days later, I noticed my father's watch case was empty, every slot bare. I found a pawn receipt tucked inside my sister's handbag, dated within the first week after his death. When I confronted them, Cynthia didn't deny it. She said Dad had promised to take care of her. My mother agreed. She said I was being dramatic. She said I cared more about things than people. That argument ended with a slap across my face. I remember the sound more than the pain, sharp, final. As I stood there, my cheek burning, I looked past my mother. Cynthia was smiling. That smile told me everything I needed to know. I left without another word. Driving away in the freezing Milwaukee night, something settled in me. Not anger, clarity. I realized that in this family, loyalty only moved in one direction, and silence was the price of belonging. A month later, I noticed strange activity on my finances. Accounts I didn't open, loans I didn't apply for. When I asked a trusted friend to look deeper, the truth came out fast. My identity had been used, my name, my social security number. The access traced back to my mother's house. That was the moment I understood the real danger. This wasn't just emotional harm anymore. It was financial, legal. And adults don't ignore threats just because they come from family. After I left the house that night, I stopped trying to fix anyone. I focused on something else instead. Control. Not control over them, control over my own exposure. For years, I had believed that patience would eventually be rewarded, that if I stayed calm, stayed useful, stayed quiet, things would balance out on their own. But what I was learning now was harder to accept. Silence doesn't create peace. It creates opportunity for the wrong person. The first sign came quietly, a notification from my bank, an account I didn't recognize, a loan inquiry I never made. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Then another alert came in, and another. I pulled my credit report and felt my stomach drop. New credit cards, payday loans, balances climbing fast, with dates I couldn't explain. This wasn't confusion, it was systematic. I reached out to a close friend of mine who works in cybersecurity, someone I trusted to look at facts, not feelings. He didn't react emotionally. He didn't ask about family history. He opened logs, tracked access points, followed patterns. The answer came back faster than I expected. My identity had been used, my social security number, my name. And the access came from one place, my mother's house. I sat there longer than I expected, staring at the screen. Not shocked, just clear. That was the moment I stopped framing this as betrayal. This was no longer about favoritism or resentment. This was about risk. Adults don't debate risk, they manage it. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't send messages. I didn't ask for explanations that would never come. I started documenting instead. Every account, every timestamp, every access point. The deeper we looked, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't a single bad decision. It was a series of choices, repeated because no one had stopped them before. When I noticed money missing from my father's retirement account, the last layer fell away. That account was supposed to be my mother's safety net. It was nearly empty, and no one had reported it. No one had questioned it. That silence told me exactly where I stood. I contacted an attorney, not to punish, to protect. He didn't ask how angry I was. He asked what could be verified. We organized records, loan applications, forged signatures, digital trails that didn't rely on memory or emotion. During this time, my sister kept calling, asking for money, talking about house expenses and temporary stress. She spoke like nothing had changed, like I was still expected to absorb the impact. I kept my responses short, neutral, non-committal. Boundaries aren't loud. They don't announce themselves. They show up as consistency. Then the story shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't just distant. I was dangerous. A police report was filed against me. Claims of a break-in, claims of violence. The intent was obvious. If I looked unstable, nothing I said would matter. My job called me the next day. They didn't accuse me, but they couldn't ignore it either. I was placed on unpaid leave while they reviewed the allegations. That moment cut deeper than the insults ever had. Not because I was afraid, but because I saw how quickly credibility disappears when lies are told with confidence. Instead of panicking, I kept moving. Security footage from my apartment, vehicle location data, timestamps that couldn't be argued with. Every piece confirmed the same truth. I wasn't there. This wasn't my word against theirs anymore. It was documentation. I filed formal reports for identity theft and financial fraud, submitted everything, and then I waited. Not in anger, in preparation. I moved into a temporary place downtown, quiet, secure, anonymous. I froze every account tied to my identity, changed credentials, removed secondary contacts. When a bank representative asked if I wanted to keep a family contact on file, I said no. For the first time in my life, I chose clarity over comfort. I didn't feel victorious, I felt steady. And that steadiness told me I was finally doing something right. The fallout didn't arrive with shouting, it arrived with paperwork. Once the reports were filed, everything moved quietly. Too quietly for anyone still relying on intimidation. While my sister kept telling relatives her version of the story, I stayed invisible. No explanations, no defenses, just process. My attorney called me one afternoon and said the words I had been waiting for. The evidence is sufficient. The authorities are ready. I didn't feel relief. I felt weight. Because once the system steps in, there's no editing the outcome. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, I stayed away from the family house. I booked a secure place downtown. Glass walls, doorman, no shared access. That space wasn't about luxury. It was about containment. I froze every remaining account tied to my name, flagged my credit, removed every secondary authorization. Each call was exhausting, but with every confirmation email, something loosened in my chest. For years, I had been managing consequences that weren't mine. Now I was closing doors. My sister never noticed. She was busy hosting, planning, spending. From what I later learned, she threw a Christmas Eve party like a victory lap. Music, champagne, designer clothes. People congratulated her. They admired the house. They believed the image. That illusion lasted until the front door opened. 2 police officers entered first. Behind them, investigators. No shouting, no rushing. Just names, charges. The room went silent. My sister tried to speak. Then she tried to cry. Then she tried to redirect blame. It didn't matter. The charges were read clearly. Financial fraud, identity theft. The party ended where it stood. She was escorted out in front of everyone who had applauded her an hour earlier. Lights flashing against the snow. I wasn't there. I was sitting in my downtown rental, holding the few things I'd managed to save. My dad's old medals, a couple of faded photos, small, quiet proof of who he was before greed got involved. I remember thinking, this is what I'm protecting. not an argument. Not my pride, just the right to keep my life intact. At 11:55 p.m., my phone rang. I recognized the number immediately. Her voice came through sharp and panicked, accusatory, unraveling. She said I had ruined everything. She said I had destroyed the family. I waited until she finished. Then I said one sentence. I didn't do this, you did. And I ended the call. The next morning, the consequences spread. The house was flagged, the accounts frozen, the financial foundation exposed. By the time my mother called, her voice had changed, not angry anymore, afraid. She asked me to fix it, to call someone, to explain. I told her the truth. There's nothing to fix. She accused me of being cruel, heartless. But cruelty is knowing harm is happening and choosing silence anyway. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply said, this is the result of choices you defended. The call ended there. Later that day, I shared the documentation with extended family. Not to punish, to correct the record. No commentary, no emotion. Just facts. The messages stopped. By evening, the bank served formal notices. The house was no longer protected. My mother packed what she could, quietly. Watching that chapter close felt strange, not satisfying, final. I didn't feel like I had won anything. I felt like the system had finally acknowledged what I had been carrying alone. This wasn't revenge, it was consequence. And once consequences arrive, there's no undoing them. The conversations that followed weren't loud. They were smaller, slower, harder to sit with. My mother called again the next day, then again the day after that. Her voice wasn't angry anymore, it was thin, tired, frightened. She didn't ask how I was. She asked what she should do, how to stop the foreclosure, how to help my sister, how to make this go away. I listened without interrupting. Then I said something I had never said to her before. I can't fix what I didn't break. She cried. She told me I was being cruel. She told me family doesn't abandon family. I let the silence stretch. Family also doesn't steal from each other, I said. Family doesn't destroy one child to protect another. She tried to argue. She said she was only trying to keep the peace. That word again, peace. What she meant was control. What it had cost was trust. I told her I wasn't filing anything new. I wasn't adding charges. I wasn't pushing for punishment. I was simply refusing to interfere. The system is doing what it's supposed to do, I said, and I'm stepping out of the way. She asked if I would come see her. I said no, not because I hated her, but because proximity had always been the lever she used. That boundary landed harder than any accusation ever had. Later that week, my sister tried one last time. The call came through as an unknown number. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. She didn't threaten me. She didn't scream. She asked if I would tell the truth in court. I paused. I already did, I said. She said she was scared. She said she didn't think it would go this far. I told her something I wish someone had told her earlier. Choices don't stop mattering just because they're familiar. She hung up. I didn't feel relief after that call. I felt grief. Not for the version of her I saw now, but for the version of us that never really existed. That night, I sat alone and let myself feel it. The loss, the disappointment, the quiet acceptance that some relationships don't heal. They end. Real talk. Forgiveness doesn't require proximity. Understanding doesn't cancel consequences. I wasn't cutting them off to be dramatic. I was doing it to survive intact. And for the first time, that choice didn't feel selfish. It felt necessary. A year has passed since that Christmas. I live in a different city now, a place where no one knows my family name, where my phone doesn't ring with demands disguised as concern. The silence here is different. It isn't heavy, it's clean. Occasionally, updates reach me through my attorney. Not details, just outcomes. My sister is serving her sentence. My mother lives a quieter life now, one shaped by consequences she once refused to acknowledge. I don't take comfort in that. I take clarity. Because distance didn't heal me. Boundaries did. What I learned is simple, but it took years to accept. Family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by behavior. Love that requires your silence isn't love. Support that costs your safety isn't support. Walking away wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of responsibility. To myself, to the future I still wanted. Real talk for anyone listening. You don't need permission to protect your life. You don't need unanimous agreement to set a boundary, and you don't owe access to people who prove they can't handle it. If you're navigating something similar, start small. Write down patterns you keep excusing. Notice who benefits from your silence. Decide what safety looks like for you and your children. And if things cross into financial or legal harm, consider talking to a trusted professional in your area. Support isn't weakness, it's strategy. I didn't rebuild my life to prove anyone wrong. I rebuilt it so I could wake up without fear. That peace is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it lasts. Before you leave, take a moment to stay with this story a little longer. If you're someone who's been carrying family weight quietly for years, stories like this exist so you don't have to feel invisible anymore. Here on Family Justice Files, we share real conversations about boundaries, accountability, and protecting your peace. If you want to keep hearing stories like this, you're welcome to subscribe and stay with us. And if this story touched something personal for you, feel free to share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next story.